Hello everybody, welcome to the American Dream. Today we have some very funny guests, very smart, and they hold interesting positions in the world. Carolina Trujillo is the, what's your job?
Director of Community Relations for Essex Media Group.
And the editor of
La Voz newspaper.
La Voz newspaper, that's the Hispanic newspaper in Lynn.
Yes.
And Cheryl Charles, who is the night editor at the Daily Item.
And also associate news editor at the Daily Item.
And associate news editor. Can we talk about your specific roles just for a minute, and then we're going to get into the subject matter. So go ahead, Cheryl.
Well, I am the main copy editor at the Daily Item, which most people know that means editing the copy, checking facts, grammar, research, all those kinds of things, checking the layout, checking the headlines, rewriting headlines when necessary.
That's got to be the most fun.
Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's a challenge, but it is fun.
Okay.
And I do love the job.
Good.
And I have a dual role. So my first role is making sure that Essex Media Group has a presence in the communities that we serve. Just make sure that we cover our service areas, that they know about what we do, and that we keep a pulse in the community. And then with La Voz newspaper, it's very mission oriented. The goal is to provide the community with a reliable source of information. So the Latino community in Lynn, Salem, Peabody, and Revere, which are our target areas, is informed of everything that's going on. It's a centralized paper, so everything that's going on within the parameters of their city. And it's important because they didn't have something like that was provided to them. People, when they are informed, they are more prone to act. And that's what we want. We want to make sure, as one of the goals of Essex Media Group is to make sure that we are inclusive and that we promote diversity. And that's kind of like one of my roles in both
And the Essex
worlds.
Media Group is the parent of the Item.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Speaking of headlines, I don't know if you saw it, but the headline of this show is "All Men Are Created Equal." I did that on purpose because we're going to talk about that today. It was in the Declaration of Independence.
Yes.
And it was really sounded terrific to a lot of us for a long time, but probably never to you, probably never to women. I mean, why would you find that attractive if they're talking about men? So when I examined it, it really means not all men, not even all white men. I mean, although it pertained to white men.
Yep. It was all
but they had to own property.
Yeah. Yes.
So it didn't apply to white men who didn't own property. It did not apply to women. Women didn't get the right to vote until the 19th Amendment.
1920.
Yep.
Susan B. Anthony led the charge for that. And really, black people didn't get the right to vote. They're still struggling with getting that right to vote, even in today's America.
Yep.
People are trying to deny the right to vote.
Well, the prison system helps disenfranchise people because a lot of people don't know that many states, and I'm not going to say how many because I don't know, once you are convicted of a felony, you lose your right to vote. Now, that isn't in the Constitution. That is because there are some states, I think Virginia was one, that just changed that law, and Florida is trying to change that law. But when you have so many people who are incarcerated, they've already been disenfranchised from the right to vote. Then there's voter suppression by ID laws or closing polling places close to you. So the right to vote is an ever changing and ever, it's still a struggle. It's still a struggle.
And it's discrimination.
Yes.
I worked in Florida in I think it was the 2004 election, and they changed that. So people, the gig was for Democrats, was to register more voters. They changed the registration laws, at least 3, and I think a lot more. So you comply with the registration laws, and say in June of that year. Beautiful, I got all these people registered. You turn in the registered voters' names, and they say, oh, we changed that law. You got to comply with the new rules. You had to start all over again. That happened at least 3 times.
Yeah.
And that was done to harass people, prevent people from voting.
Yeah, there's institutional racism, we can call it, because we know based on demographics and statistics that, you know, blacks and minorities are incarcerated at a much higher rate than their counterparts that are white. And same with the loan industries for home ownership, same with loans for automobiles, same with all our financial institutions opening, just a basic opening a checking account. Creating a record, a history of credit in this country was problematic. So now there are laws that protect it, and going back to that statement, all men are created equal. I think it's really inclusive language. The problem is how we basically, how do I say it, institutionalize or implemented that language is where the problem lies, because it is inclusive language. All men are created equal. We just determine that that's not what we want to understand. So then we have the different...
that wasn't a reality.
Exactly.
But let's talk about what's going on today with women. Has everything resolved? I mean, you know, you feel like all women are created equal? No?
Absolutely not. Actually, I think that under our current leadership, I think that it's more evident than ever that women are not created equal, and that we have not the upper hand in any negotiation or discussion when we have to deal with society, mainstream society. There are gender roles, very specific gender roles that we thought we've had overcome based on women being more involved in the job force, you know, more educated, earning a similar, even though our pay structures are not the same, but at least climbing up the ladder in salary and wage gain. But that's not the case.
In fact, it's almost like we're going backwards. I think
I feel the same way.
The whole Me Too movement was interesting to most of us, because when this first came out and our boss came to me and he sat down and he says, "What's going on?" And I said, "You know what? You're just finding out what 51% of the population already knew." Because women are 51% of the population. We already knew about sexual harassment. We already knew about job discrimination, about gender stereotypes, about all of these things. This is not new material for us. It's just that suddenly it's come to the mainstream because celebrities are coming out and celebrities are being shamed. But we're not talking about the women who are in the service industry, the women who serve your food, clean your hotel room, whatever, who have to deal with that, pick your grapes, who have to deal with that kind of harassment, sexual abuse, rape, discrimination, intimidation every single day. And they don't have a voice because they're not wearing a black ball gown and
Valentino gown.
Yeah, and standing on the stage and talking about
Explain the Me Too movement, please.
This was actually started by a black woman who wanted to say that I too have been a victim. Before the Me Too movement, there was Yes, All Women. And a lot of people don't remember that. That was a couple of years ago. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
When they talked about how women are afraid of men. And I don't know where this quote came from, but someone once said, "Men are afraid women will laugh at them. Women are afraid men will kill them."
Yep.
And that is part of the catcalling, the heckling. Sometimes it starts when a girl is prepubescent, and it goes on throughout much of her life. And that was, yes, all women. All women feel like this. All women are afraid. All women are affected. Now we're finding that there's a lot of Me Too women that are saying, I too have been affected by these things. I too have been victimized by these things. And that's where it started. Now we've moved on to time's up.
Yeah.
Let's see how far this goes. But what we need is also for men to recognize it and join in.
Yeah.
Because I've had so many men, my husband, other men, that say, I've never catcalled anyone. Yeah, but you've probably heard it and just tuned it out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So I represent a lot of women who've been sexually abused, mm-hmm. and you can almost see it in their eyes. So I saw, I don't know, the Oscars or something, and the
Golden Globes.
The Golden Globes.
Mm-hmm.
And the camera scanned over the audience. And I swear to God, virtually every woman in that audience looked like they had been sexually abused. Now, that could be just my...
Well, there's also a dynamic of power in this equation. So in this particular case is from a person who had the power to determine your future, mm-hmm. which,
right.
you know, like Cheryl was saying, you know, if you have the person who works at a hotel, well, there's a manager that can determine your future. He can mm-hmm. fire you. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden he gets to put his will over yours. That's the basic core definition of abuse.
And that's where the sexual abuse comes in too.
Yes.
Because they have that
yep.
power.
Because there's a power that
yeah.
basically defines what your future will be.
And let's be clear, when women are being harassed and abused and raped, it's not about desire. It is always about the power. It is yeah. always about the intimidation.
Yep. Power and control.
And control, that's the word, and control of something. It isn't, oh, she was so beautiful, I just wanted a date. I found a lot of men were saying, well, I don't know how to talk to girls anymore. I don't know how to talk to women because everybody's so sensitive. They're so touchy now. Well, you talk to them like they're a human being. You don't have to catcall, hey, baby, yeah. or all of this stuff on when they're walking down the street. Has anybody, I want a show of hands anywhere, of any woman who met her husband who heckled her on the street or yelled out something rude to her in a car? You're not doing that to meet women. You're doing that to intimidate them
and to objectify them.
Yes,
basically that's what this is all about: objectifying women, and basically using your privilege and your strength to get ahead of whatever you want to impose over them.
So you said your boss asked you about this. Mm-hmm. So that's a good sign.
Yes, but he's also one of the people who was baffled by it because he didn't understand why this should be a problem, why men can't talk to women like they're human beings. My husband was the same way. And there are a lot of men who are the same way, but there's plenty of them who still won't own what they have done. That's in celebrities, that's everywhere else. They won't own what they thought was fun. There was a woman that she did, it was on Facebook, one of those YouTube things, where she asked these men, well, she would stop them after she was heckled, and she asked them why they were doing that, and she says, well, are you aware that you're making women feel afraid? And the more she talked to these men, well, they just decided, well, no, it was fun for them, so they didn't care that they were making women mm-hmm. feel afraid mm-hmm. because they don't want to own that. It's not about how the victim feels. It's about it making them feel good. It's like mm-hmm. the bully which is what it is. It's bullying.
Yeah.
It's the bully who beats up someone else because that makes you feel powerful.
Yep. And I think that we have to do as a society, I think that now that we've created enough awareness about what's going on, but I think that now the second step is how do we educate our boys and our girls, little, young boys and girls.
Especially boys.
Exactly. How do we, and girls, because
and
this
girls.
is the other thing. We have a generation that based on gender roles, there's been studies that say that women are more scared to offend people, mm-hmm. hurt their feelings, because that's what we teach them to do. That's not nice, and we expect girls to comply with those gender roles. Well, women need to be taught to say no and be assertive and be affirmative and say, I don't want this, I don't like the wine, I don't want to go to your house, which we have the right to do, but sometimes we don't because we don't want to be perceived as, oh, she's so frigid, oh, she's cold as stone, or we don't want to be labeled in a negative way. Yes. There was a very interesting study, I don't remember who conducted it, about how many women would go in an elevator when there was a shady person in the elevator that you, after the fact that you went in the elevator, you felt intimidated by the person. It was only you and that person. And most women would go in the elevator because they didn't want to offend the person in the elevator and think that, make him feel bad, risking their own safety and their own instinct of maybe I shouldn't do this. But yet, I don't want him to perceive me as being the problematic, or I don't want to offend him. We're very complacent that way. So we have to do that part of kind of like fill that education with our girls, and also teach our boys that women are not to be objectified. Women are like other human beings, just like them. They're, you have to respect them, love them, care for them. And based on those principles, I think you're going to have healthier relationships.
How do you do that? I'm sorry, Cheryl, go ahead.
Yeah, Carolina reminded me of a book that I read, and for the life of me, I cannot remember this gentleman's name. It's Gavin something. It's called The Gift of Fear. And when she talks about how women will put themselves in danger to not offend, and that's what women do. I remember walking down the street with a girlfriend, and there was a man that was coming up toward us, and I said, let's cross the street. And she says, well, yeah, but then he's going to think something. And I says, well, I don't care, because either he's not going to pay any attention, or if he had something in mind to bother us, and that's the same thing with a group of men. If he had something in mind to bother us, well, now he knows we've put him on alert, and we're farther away. We're aware. And we're across the street from him. So now, if he follows us across the street, now we know that he had the intention. And if he didn't, he's not going to care that we crossed the street. And this is what we do. And Carolina has a son, and I have a daughter. And we would have to have different conversations, because she's teaching her son. Obviously, we both have to teach our children about respect and consent. Yeah. But I had to tell my daughter at the time when she was first taking the T into school, if someone gets up in your face or tries to get too close to you on the train, I want you to be really, really loud in saying, get away from me. And I said a word that I obviously can't say here, but I wanted her to, and I've told other young women that too, call attention to the problem, because we are so conditioned as women to not make waves, to not say anything, to not embarrass ourselves, that this goes on. So you have guys standing around putting cameras up women's skirts. If you loud talk them, if you say them, if you call it out, someone will notice, and he's going to be intimidated. He's going to move away. But that's the conversation I had to have with my daughter, because she's been catcalled. She's been heckled.
Yep. And with my son, the conversation is very similar. You have to respect personal space. You have to make sure that you don't intimidate people by your presence. It's important. You're going to be perceived as someone who's young, who's maybe hormonal. I don't know. But you have to make sure that your conversation is proper, so you're not put in a situation where you're going to make someone uncomfortable, or you're going to feel uncomfortable too, and you're going to be wrongly perceived. So these conversations are more common now, I think, because we don't want our kids, I don't want my son. Sons. Exactly. I don't want my son to be in a situation like this, to be with a group of friends where they're all, the group factor influences kids, especially if they're teenagers. Absolutely. They're going to act out because they're knuckleheads. That's what they do. They're not thinking things through. Their brain is not processed yet to think consequence. So of course they're going to be doing things that normally by themselves they wouldn't do. So these are conversations that every parent, I think, should have, not only with their daughters, but also with their sons.
I think especially with this, I mean, I would think the daughters instinctively know how to protect themselves.
No, they don't. Okay. They don't, because little girls are taught to always be nice. Yeah. If, someone's not, offers you a drink, no, that's okay. And then, I'm not good enough. So you're taught to swallow those feelings that you have of that person isn't for me, and try to make them feel comfortable. So we don't know that's the problem, is that we are taught to go against our instincts. And men are taught through society to move forward even when in the face of being no. When I was of being heard no. When I was a little girl, I used to remember the old movies where the guy would kiss the woman, she'd slap him, he'd kiss her again, she'd slap him again, he'd kiss her the third time, and she'd submit. Yeah. I never understood, even as a little girl, why that used to make me so angry. That used to always make me so angry, because I used to say, punch him again. Because, but what that was teaching our society is that if you pursue this woman,
you water her down.
You will, you'll wear her down, and then she's going to love you. And that's what young men have been taught for generations. So now all of a sudden when someone says no, they think, oh, I'll just persist. I mean, now it's like, now you have stalking laws and things like that we shouldn't have had to have, because no is a complete sentence.
Yep. Or the mixed message sometimes, and that's why the equation with girls, it has to be the same, because sometimes we have little boys misbehaving with little girls, and then we tell the little girl, he likes you. He's just a boy. Yes. Boys act like that. Boys are different. Guess what? If this little boy is acting negatively with you, then step aside from this little boy. He needs to deal with his consequence of his poor behavior and his poor choices, but don't think that it's okay for him to mistreat you, even in the playground. Yes. Because he's just different. Yeah. And then we grow up thinking, yeah, boys are different. Yeah, they're going to be loud and they're going to be verbally abusive, and that's just how they communicate. They don't have...
And they're going to control you and tell you what you can wear and who you can talk to and where you can go, because they just really love you.
Exactly. And there's a lot of abuse among the teenage population. Yes. And it's growing, it's growing by the minute.
Interesting.
Because of those mixed messages. Another thing that we have to change as a society is we have females talk about their feelings. That's what we teach them. And you grow up as a female and you have an issue and you have 3 girlfriends on speed dial. This one is kind of like the rational one. You go for certain things, you go to this one. This one is the emotional one, where you can just kind of pour your heart out and she's going to hug you and say, everything's going to be okay, don't worry. Like, you have very specific girlfriends, but you have them. Guys, on the other hand, little boys, are taught to man up. What does that even mean? Man up. Like, suppress your feelings. And all of a sudden, don't cry. All of a sudden, we expect them to magically just get these skills from the environment. All of a sudden, we're in marriage and we're in relationship with them, and we want them to talk about, how do you feel? Why are you pissed? Why can't you just talk to me? Just tell me how you feel. They can't, because we haven't allowed them to practice the skill forever. Yes. While we have a lifetime of practicing. So the expectation on having a good communicator at the end of the day, when men start being in relationships with females, it's unrealistic, because we haven't taught our little boys to be communicators. We teach girls to be overly communicative. We don't teach boys to communicate. We teach them to shut up and man up and boys don't cry and all these stereotypical gender roles that we put them in. So again, the education needs to happen with both.
How do you educate that?
Well, I think that we start with little boys and we start breaking those stereotypes.
You allow them to cry when they're hurt. Yeah. Just allow them to cry, and then they're not, when they're being bullied at school, when they're in the middle school and the high school, they're not going and getting dad's gun and going and shooting up a class because they've been hurting for so long. You let them cry when they're hurt. Yeah. That's you let them cry, you let them talk, you tell them that it's okay. If dad is in the picture, let dad comfort this little boy and say it's okay to cry and it's okay to be hurt. You know, it's not a girl thing.
It's normalizing behavior.
Yes.
It's acknowledgement that we all feel. Men tend to go to rage and anger. Yes. And there's no other behavior in between. If they're jealous, they go to angry. If they're disappointed, they go to angry. And that's the only emotion that they know, anger. Yes. And it's a cover-up emotion, because you can't go from anger, you can't really do anything else. When you can identify what you're really feeling is when you can actually act on it. I'm feeling disappointed. I'm feeling jealous. I'm feeling insecure. I'm feeling disrespected. once you can identify your emotion, then you can definitely talk about, all right, I'm feeling insecure. Why am I feeling insecure? What is it about what this person is doing that's making me insecure? And then you can have a conversation with yourself and bring yourself down. But men are taught to go to anger. And from anger, there's really nothing you can do from anger.
Because because with the anger comes that lack of control, so they seek to control. Because most people, when we get really, really angry, we're out of control. When you get to that rage stage, you're already out of control. So what you're going to do is try to suppress someone else because you're out of control, so you want to control everything else around you. And we need to let people let go of that. Okay, you're disappointed. That girl didn't like you. Okay, fine.
We're going to have to wrap this up soon. How do you get this point across?
Speak up.
Do you do anything in school? Yeah, okay, always speak up, right? I agree with that.
Speak up, speak up.
What about schools? What role should they play?
Schools need, I don't know if they have the health class anymore, but relationships should be a class because our teenagers and preteens are very, very quick to hook up, to become sexually involved with each other at much too young of an age,
to fantasize
relationships, to move through relationships, to fantasize drama. They see drama on TV, they see girls and boys fighting over each other, and then they need to learn about healthy relationships, what a healthy relationship looks like. Boundaries, because sometimes many of us don't grow up with those healthy relationships being modeled at the home.
Right.
Exactly.
So they need to be
you would have these classes?
I would have classes on relationships, not necessarily sexual, but definitely how to communicate when you don't want something as well as when you do. I mean, we do teach about birth control and the biology of that, but we don't teach, if that boy is telling you that you can't be with that girl, that girlfriend of yours, or you can't be with that boy that you have been friends with because he's jealous, that's not healthy.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry. Oh, go ahead.
I think that it's really important that we really identify the different types of abuse, because I think that the arrestable offenses are physical abuse, but there's multiple layers of how you can be abusive to a person.
Okay.
Actually, you can be very abusive by having a smile on your face and be very intimidating and be very
This was a great show.
Yeah.
We have to wrap it up. Thank you very much. Carolina Trujillo and Cheryl Charles.
Thank you.
You both did a great job. Really.
Thanks for having us.
I'm going to push it for people to watch this show because you made great points.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.